Jake was showing the customer a different watch when he heard Lisa make a small gasping sound behind him. He turned to see her standing frozen near the cleaning station, holding a cloth in one hand and a watch in the other. Her face had gone completely white, and she was staring at the bearded man with wide eyes. "Lisa, are you okay?" Jake asked, concerned that she might have damaged the watch she was holding. Lisa opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked like she had seen a ghost. The customer turned to look at her too, and when their eyes met, he gave her a small, friendly nod and a gentle smile. "Oh my God," Lisa whispered so quietly that Jake could barely hear her. She quickly said, "Down the watch and cloth," then walked over to Jake. "Jake, can I talk to you for a second?" Jake looked at the customer apologetically. "Excuse me for just one moment, sir." The bearded man nodded. "Take your time. I'll just keep looking around." Lisa grabbed Jake's arm and pulled him a few steps away from the customer. She leaned in, close, and whispered urgently in his ear. "Jake, do you know who that is?" "What do you mean?" Jake whispered back, confused. "That's Keanu Reeves," Lisa said, her voice shaking with excitement and disbelief. Jake looked at her like she was crazy. "What? No, it's not. That's just some guy in old jeans." "Jake, I'm serious, that's really him. I've seen all his movies like 50 times. That's Neo from The Matrix. It's John Wick. That's Keanu freaking Reeves." Jake looked back at the customer, who was now studying a display of vintage Rolex watches. The man did have long dark hair and a beard, but Jake had never been good with recognizing famous people. Plus, the customer was dressed so casually that Jake couldn't imagine him being a movie star. "You're imagining things," Jake said. "Movie stars don't just walk into watch stores dressed like that." "Yes, they do," Lisa insisted, "especially him. He's famous for being super normal and humble. He rides the subway in New York. He sits on benches and eats sandwiches like regular people. This is exactly how he would dress." Jake felt a weird feeling in his stomach. Could Lisa be right? He looked at the customer again, trying to see if he could recognize any famous features. The baseball cap made it hard to see the man's face clearly. "If you're right," Jake whispered, "what am I supposed to do? I can't just change how I'm treating him." "Jake, if that's really Keanu Reeves, he probably has more money than everyone in this store combined. And you've been trying to talk him out of buying expensive watches for the last 30 minutes. Oh." The weird feeling in Jake's stomach got worse. He thought about all the times he had suggested cheaper alternatives and mentioned that the expensive watches might be outside his price range. If Lisa was right, Jake had been incredibly rude to one of the most famous actors in the world. "I don't think it's him," Jake said, but his voice didn't sound very confident anymore. Lisa looked frustrated. "Jake, trust me. I know what I'm talking about. It's definitely him." While they were whispering, the customer continued looking at watches peacefully. He seemed genuinely interested in every piece, reading the information cards and studying the details carefully. Didn't act impatient or annoyed that Jake was taking so long to come back. "Should I go ask him?" Jake wondered aloud. "No, don't do that," Lisa said quickly. "If he wanted people to recognize him, he wouldn't be dressed like that. He's probably trying to have a normal shopping experience." "Then what should I do? Just treat him normally? But maybe stop trying to talk him out of buying expensive stuff?" Jake nodded, feeling nervous and confused. He walked back over to the customer, who was now looking at a display of complicated watches with multiple functions. "Sorry about that," Jake said. "My coworker had a question about something." "No problem at all," the man said kindly. "These are fascinating. This one shows the phases of the moon, right?" "Yes, that's a moon phase complication," Jake explained, grateful to get back to talking about watches. "It tracks the lunar cycle and shows what the moon looks like on any given day." "That's incredible," the customer said. "How accurate is it?" "Very accurate. It only needs to be adjusted once every 122 years. The customer seemed impressed. "The engineering behind these things is amazing. All those tiny gears and springs working together for over a century." As they talked, Jake found himself studying the man's face more carefully. There was something familiar about his voice and the way he moved. The customer was polite and soft-spoken, and he had a calm way of listening that made Jake feel comfortable. "You mentioned earlier that you were interested in the Patek Philippe," Jake said, deciding to test Lisa's theory. "Are you a collector?" Have a few pieces, the man said modestly. I'm not an expert or anything, but I appreciate good craftsmanship. There's something special about owning something that was made with such care and skill. Jake was starting to think Lisa might be right. The customer talked about watches like someone who had owned expensive ones before. He knew technical terms and asked intelligent questions. But he was so humble and normal that it was hard to believe he was famous. The Patek Philippe you were looking at earlier, Jake said carefully. It's really a special piece. Would you like to see it up close? Customer's face lit up. I would love that if it's not too much trouble. Jake's hand shook slightly as he unlocked the display case. This was either a regular customer who couldn't afford the watch or one of the most famous actors in the world. Either way, Jake was about to show him a $200,000 timepiece. As Jake carefully lifted the watch from its cushion, he heard footsteps coming from the back office. He looked up to see Robert Kim, the store manager, walking toward them. Robert was usually calm and professional, but right now he looked panicked. Robert's eyes locked onto the bearded customer, and his face went through several different expressions very quickly. First surprise, then recognition, then what looked like complete terror. Mr. Reeves, Robert said in a voice that was much higher than usual. What an honor to have you in our store. Jake's hands froze halfway to handing over the watch. The expensive timepiece hung in the air between him and the customer as the words sunk in. Mr. Reeves. Lisa had been right. Jake was holding a $200,000 watch, and he was about to hand it to Keanu Reeves, the same man he had spent the last hour trying to convince to look at cheaper alternatives. The same man he had worried might not be able to afford expensive watches. The famous actor looked slightly embarrassed by Robert's formal greeting. Please, just call me Keanu. I was hoping to look at some of your beautiful watches. Robert nodded enthusiastically. Of course, of course. Jake, I see you're already taking excellent care of Mr. Reeves. Jake felt like the floor might disappear beneath his feet. He looked at the watch in his hands, then at Keanu Reeves, then at his manager's expectant face. His mouth felt dry, and he couldn't think of anything to say. Jake has been wonderful, Keanu said kindly. Very knowledgeable and helpful. Jake finally managed to hand over the watch, though his hands were still shaking slightly. He watched as one of the most famous people in the world examined the timepiece he had tried so hard to steer him away from. After they had talked for over an hour, Keanu picked up the Patek Philippe again and held it carefully in his hands. The afternoon sun was starting to get lower, casting golden light through the store windows. I think this is the one, Keanu said, looking at the vintage watch. Danny will love it. It has character and history, just like he does. Jake felt honored to be part of this decision. Should I wrap it up for you? Yes, please, Keanu said. But make it simple. Danny doesn't like fancy packaging. He cares more about what's inside than how it looks on the outside. Jake smiled. That sounded exactly like something the humble stunt coordinator would prefer. Jake carefully placed the watch back in its original box and began preparing the paperwork. While Jake was working, Keanu walked around the store one more time, looking at other watches. He stopped in front of a display case that held some of the less expensive pieces. Jake, Keanu called over. Come here for a minute. Jake walked over, wondering what Keanu wanted to see. That one, Keanu said, pointing to a watch in the middle of the case. Tell me about it. Jake looked at where Keanu was pointing. It was a simple but well-made watch from a Swiss company. Nothing too fancy, but solid and reliable. The price was around $3,000. It's a good watch, Jake said. Not as complicated as some of the others, but very well built.
I'll bet.
Company has been making watches like this for over 100 years. It's the kind of watch you could wear every day for the rest of your life. What do you think of the design? Keanu asked. I like it, Jake said honestly. It's clean and simple. No unnecessary decorations. Just good craftsmanship and honest materials. Keanu nodded. I'd like to buy that one too. Jake was surprised. For Danny as well? No, Keanu said with a smile. For you. Jake's mouth fell open. What? No, I can't accept that. It's too expensive. Jake, I want you to have it, Keanu said. Firmly? Not because I feel sorry for you or because I'm trying to show off. I want you to have it because today you taught me something important. I taught you something, Jake said, confused. You're the one who taught me everything. Showed me what honest service looks like, Keanu explained. You were trying to protect me from spending money I couldn't afford. You put my welfare ahead of your commission? That's rare and valuable. Jake shook his head. But I was wrong about you. I made assumptions. Your intentions were good, Keanu said. And good intentions matter more than perfect execution. Besides, you listened when Lisa tried to tell you who I was. You adjusted your behavior when you got new information. That shows you can learn and grow. Robert stepped forward. Mr. Reeves, that's very generous, but it's not necessary. He was just doing his job. No, he was doing more than his job, Keanu said. He was treating me like a human being he cared about. That goes beyond just making a sale. Jake felt overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Say thank you and accept the gift, Keanu said with a laugh. But more importantly, remember why I'm giving it to you. Every time you look at that watch, I want you to remember that every person who walks through this door deserves respect and kindness, regardless of how they look or how much money you think they have. Jake felt tears forming in his eyes. Hell, remember, I promise. Keanu put his hand on Jake's shoulder. And remember that the best salespeople aren't the ones who can spot wealthy customers from across the room. The best salespeople are the ones who treat everyone well and build genuine relationships with people. I understand, Jake said. There's one more thing, Keanu said. Don't let this experience make you afraid to be honest with customers about pricing. What you did today looking out for someone's budget, that was good customer service. Don't make assumptions about what people can afford based on their appearance. He was starting to see how he could apply everything he had learned. While Jake prepared both purchases, Keanu talked with Lisa and Robert about the store and the watch business. I asked thoughtful questions about their experiences and seemed genuinely interested in their answers. Jake noticed that Keanu gave both of them the same respectful attention he had given Jake. When everything was ready, Keanu paid for both watches without any drama or ceremony. He treated the transaction like any normal purchase, even though he was spending over $200,000. Jake, Keanu said as he prepared to leave. Can I give you one last piece of advice? Of course, Jake said. Don't let anyone make you feel bad about where you come from or what you don't have, Keanu said. I can tell you're a good person with a strong work ethic. Those qualities will take you far in life, probably farther than you imagine right now. Thank you, Jake said, for everything. Not just the watch, but for teaching me how to be better. You're going to do great things, Keanu said confidently. I can see it in how you care about doing the right thing. As Keanu walked toward the door, he turned back one more time.
Oh.
And Jake, the next time someone comes in here dressed casually, remember that they might be a millionaire. Or they might be someone who can barely afford a cup of coffee. Either way, they deserve the same level of respect and service. I'll remember, Jake said. Good, Keanu said with a final smile. Take care of yourself. After Keanu left, the store felt different to Jake. The same watches were in the same cases. But Jake saw everything with new eyes. He looked down at the watch box Keanu had given him and carefully opened it. The watch was beautiful in its simplicity. Lisa came over and looked at the watch with amazement. I can't believe that just happened. Neither can I, Jake said. Robert approached them both. Jake, I have to say, you handled that situation very well. Mr. Reeves seemed genuinely impressed with your service. Jake thought about everything that had happened. I think I learned more in the last 2 hours than I have in my whole life. What did you learn? Lisa asked. Jake looked at the watch in his hands, then at his coworkers, then at the customers. Walking by outside the store window, I learned that everyone has a story. Everyone deserves respect. The most important thing isn't how much money someone has, it's how they treat other people. From that day forward, Jake approached every customer with the same respect and attention he had eventually given to Keanu Reeves. He discovered that when you treat people well, regardless of their appearance or circumstances, amazing things can happen. Some customers became friends. Others shared their stories and taught him about life. A few even became mentors who helped him grow both personally and professionally. The watch became more than just a timepiece to Jake. Every time he looked at it, remembered the lesson about treating everyone with dignity and kindness. It reminded him that true success isn't measured by how much money you make, but by how positively you impact the lives of others. And sometimes, late at night when the store was quiet, Jake would think about Danny, the stunt coordinator, receiving his vintage Patek Philippe. And he would smile, knowing that he had been part of a story about friendship, loyalty, and the power of recognizing good people when you meet them. Jake's face felt hot, like he had been standing too close to a fire. His heart was beating so fast he worried that everyone in the store could hear it. He had just spent over an hour telling Keanu Reeves that expensive watches were probably too costly for him. It suggested that one of the most successful actors in Hollywood should look at cheaper options in the back room. Jake wanted to disappear. He wanted to crawl under the counter and hide until his shift ended. Better yet, he wanted to quit his job and never show his face in Beverly Hills again. How could he have been so stupid? How could he not have recognized one of the most famous people in the world? Keanu was holding the Patek Philippe carefully, turning it over in his hands to examine the back. The watch looked tiny in his fingers, but he handled it like he understood how precious it was. Jake watched him study the intricate engravings and the complicated mechanism visible through the crystal back. "This is beautiful work," Keanu said softly. "You can see every gear and spring. It's like looking into the heart of time itself." Robert stood nearby, nodding enthusiastically at everything Keanu said. Jake had never seen his manager act so nervous and excited at the same time. Robert kept adjusting his tie and smoothing down his hair. "Mr. Reeves, Keanu, we are so honored to have you here," Robert said. "If there's anything special you're looking for, anything at all, we can make it happen." Jake felt even worse. Robert was treating Keanu like royalty, while Jake had been treating him like someone who couldn't afford a nice watch. The difference was embarrassing and obvious. "I really appreciate that," Keanu said, looking up from the watch. "But Jake here has been taking excellent care of me. He knows a lot about watches, and he's been very helpful." Jake's stomach dropped even further. Keanu was being kind about the whole situation, which somehow made Jake feel worse than if he had been angry. Jake would have preferred anger. Anger he could understand. His kindness felt like it made his mistake even more terrible. "Jake is one of our best associates," Robert said quickly, though Jake knew that wasn't really true. Jake was just a regular employee who was still learning about expensive watches. "I can tell," Keanu said, looking directly at Jake with a warm smile. "He was very honest with me about pricing and very protective of my wallet. I respect that kind of straightforward service." Jake wanted to say something, but his throat felt closed up. He had apologized to difficult customers before, but this was different. This wasn't just about bad service or a misunderstanding. He had made assumptions about someone based on how they looked and dressed. He had judged Keanu Reeves and found him wanting without knowing anything about him. Lisa appeared at Jake's elbow, still looking amazed. "I can't believe you're really here," she said to Keanu. "I've seen The Matrix probably 20 times. Keanu smiled at her. "It's very kind. Have you to say? I hope you enjoyed it. Are you working on any new movies?" Lisa asked. "Always something in the works," Keanu said diplomatically. "But right now I'm more interested in these beautiful timepieces." Jake realized that Keanu was trying to keep the conversation focused on watches instead of his celebrity status. He seemed uncomfortable with the attention, even though he was being polite about it. "The watch you're holding," Jake finally managed to say, his voice coming out rougher than he intended. "It's from 1955. It belonged to a collector in Switzerland for 40 years before we acquired it." Keanu looked interested. "What's its story? Do you know anything about the original owner?" Jake was grateful to have something specific to talk about. He was a watchmaker himself, bought it new, and wore it every day until he retired. His family said he wound it every morning for 40 years and never missed a day. "That's wonderful," Keanu said. "I love that it was actually worn and loved, not just kept in a safe somewhere. Watches are meant to be used." "The seller told us," Jake said, feeling a little more confident. He said his grandfather believed that keeping a watch unworn was like keeping a song unsung. Keanu nodded thoughtfully. That's a beautiful way to put it. Well, these things are too special to just sit and look pretty. Robert cleared his throat. Mr. Reeves, Keanu, would you like to see any of our other premium pieces? We have some exclusive items that aren't on display. I'd be interested in that, Keanu said, but I'm also curious about Jake's opinion. Which pieces do you think are the most special? Jake felt surprised that Keanu was asking for his opinion, especially after everything that had happened. Well, there's a 1960s Rolex Daytona that has an amazing story. And we have a Vacheron Constantin that's over 100 years old. I'd love to hear about both of those, Keanu said. As Jake started explaining the history of the other watches, he began to relax slightly. Talking about the timepieces was easier than thinking about his embarrassing mistake. Keanu listened carefully to every detail, asking thoughtful questions and showing genuine appreciation for the craftsmanship. You mentioned earlier that you collect watches, Jake said. What got you interested in them? My father had an old watch that he wore every day, Keanu said. It was nothing fancy, just a reliable piece that he loved. After he passed away, I inherited it, and I started paying attention to how much these little machines meant to people. They're not just about telling time. They're about memory and connection in the passage of our lives. Jake felt a lump in his throat. There was something in the way Keanu talked about his father's watch that was deeply personal and sad. Jake realized that for all his fame and success, Keanu was just a person who missed his dad and wanted to feel connected to him. That's a beautiful way to think about it, Jake said quietly. It helps me understand why people form such strong attachments to these pieces, Keanu continued. They become part of our daily rituals, part of how we mark time and remember important moments. Robert stepped forward again. We have several pieces that might have that kind of significance. Family, heirloom quality items. Actually, Keanu said, I'm not shopping for myself today. I'm looking for a gift for someone very important to me. Someone who has been incredibly loyal and has literally saved my life. Jake felt curious, despite his nervousness. What kind of person are you shopping for? My stunt coordinator, Keanu said. We've worked together for over 10 years. He's been with me through some very dangerous scenes. And there was one particular incident where his quick thinking and skill prevented what could have been a very serious accident. That sounds like someone who deserves something special, Jake said. He's refused every bonus and extra payment I've tried to give him over the years, Keanu explained. He always says he's just doing his job. I want to give him something. That shows how much I value his friendship and professionalism. Jake looked at the Patek Philippe that Keanu was still holding. This would certainly be a meaningful gift. I think so too, Keanu said. Something this beautiful and well-made would honor the kind of person he is. Jake Martinez checked his watch for the third time in 10 minutes. Tuesday afternoons were always slow at Sterling Timepieces, the fancy watch store on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills. The place sold watches that cost more money than most people made in a year. Jake had been working there for 8 months now, and he still felt nervous around the expensive pieces. The store was quiet except for the soft ticking of dozens of luxury watches. Jake wiped down the glass counter for what felt like the 100th time that day. His manager always told the staff to look busy, even when there were no customers around. The afternoon sun came through the big windows, making the gold and silver watches sparkle like tiny suns. Jake was 24 years old and still lived with his parents in a small apartment in East Los Angeles. He took 2 buses to get to work every day. The job paid okay, but not great. Most days he felt like he was pretending to belong in this world of rich people and expensive things. The other salespeople seemed to fit in better. They wore nicer clothes and knew how to talk to wealthy customers without getting nervous. The bell above the door chimed, and Jake looked up to see a man walking into the store. The customer was tall, with shoulder-length dark hair and a beard that looked like he hadn't shaved in a few days. He wore old blue jeans with holes in the knees, a plain black t-shirt, and worn-out sneakers. A simple baseball cap sat on his head. Pulled down low over his eyes, Jake watched as the man walked slowly around the store, looking at the different display cases. The customers' clothes looked like they came from a regular store, not the kind of expensive shops that surrounded Sterling. Timepieces. Jake had learned to spot the difference between customers who could afford the watches and those who were just looking. This man definitely seemed like he was just looking. The customer stopped in front of the main display case, the one that held the most expensive watches in the store. Jake walked over, putting on his best sales smile. He had practiced this smile in the mirror at home until it looked natural. "Good afternoon, sir. Can I help you with something today?" Jake asked politely. The man looked up and smiled back. His smile seemed real, not like the fake ones Jake was used to seeing from some customers. "Hi there. I was hoping to take a look at some of your watches. That one caught my eye." He pointed to a watch in the center of the display case. Jake looked at where the man was pointing and felt his stomach drop a little. It was a vintage Patek Philippe, one of the most expensive pieces in the store. The price tag read $200,000. Jake had only seen 3 people buy watches that expensive in all his time working there. All of them had been wearing suits that probably cost more than Jake's car. "Oh, that's a beautiful piece," Jake said carefully. "It's a vintage Patek Philippe from 1955. Very rare." He paused, trying to think of the right way to say what he needed to say. "But I should mention it's quite expensive. It might be outside your price range." The customer nodded and kept looking at the watch. "How much is it?" $200,000, Jake said, watching the man's face for any reaction. The customer didn't seem shocked or surprised. He just nodded again. "It's beautiful. The craftsmanship looks incredible." Jake felt uncomfortable. He had been trained to handle situations like this, but it never got easier. "We have some other options that might be more suitable," he said. "There are some really nice watches in the back room that are more reasonably priced. Some of them are under $5,000. The man looked at Jake with kind eyes. "I appreciate that, but I'm really interested in this particular piece. Could I take a closer look at it?" Jake hesitated. The store had rules about handling the most expensive items. They were supposed to be careful about who they showed them to. Something happened to a $200,000 watch, it would be a disaster. Jake's manager had told him stories about salespeople at other stores who had lost their jobs after letting the wrong customers handle expensive pieces. "Well, sir, I understand your interest, but this particular watch requires special handling," Jake said. "Maybe I could show you some similar styles that are more accessible?" The customer seemed patient and understanding. "I get it. You have to be careful with expensive things. But I'm really curious about the movement in this one. Is it the original mechanism from 1955? Jake was surprised by the question. Most people who couldn't afford expensive watches didn't know much about watch movements or mechanisms. This man seemed to know something about watches, which made Jake feel a bit more confused about how to handle the situation. "Yes, it still has the original movement," Jake answered. "It's been serviced, but all the original parts are there. The craftsmanship from that era was really something special." "I bet it was," the man said. "They don't make them like that anymore. Everything was done by hand back then, right?" "That's right," Jake said, warming up to the conversation despite his nervousness. Each watch took months to complete. The attention to detail was incredible. The customer listened carefully to everything Jake said. He asked more questions about different watches in the case, showing real knowledge about brands and techniques. Jake found himself enjoying the conversation. Even though he was still worried about store policy, other customers came and went while they talked. Jake noticed that his coworker Lisa kept looking over at them with a strange expression on her face. She seemed like she wanted to say something, but kept stopping herself. The man with the beard was different from most customers Jake dealt with. He wasn't demanding or rude. He didn't act like he was better than Jake or treat him like he was just there to serve him. The customer seemed genuinely interested in Jake's knowledge about watches and asked his opinion on different pieces. "You really know your stuff," the customer said, after Jake explained the difference between 2 different types of watch complications. "How long have you been working with watches?" "About 8 months here," Jake said. "But I've always been interested in how things work. Watches are like tiny machines. All those little parts working together perfectly." The customer smiled. "That's a great way to think about it. There's something beautiful about that precision, isn't there?" As they continued talking, Jake kept glancing at the expensive Patek Philippe, the customer's eyes kept returning to it too. Jake could see the man really wanted to look at it more closely, but Jake's training told him to be careful. The customer's clothes and casual appearance made Jake nervous about following through with showing him such an expensive piece. The afternoon sun was getting lower, casting longer shadows across the store floor. Jake realized they had been talking for almost 30 minutes, longer than he usually spent with any single customer who wasn't making a purchase. Jake took a deep breath and decided he had to say something. The guilt was eating him up inside, and he couldn't pretend everything was normal anymore. Mr. Reeves. He started, then stopped. Keanu, I need to apologize. Keanu looked up from the watch he was examining. Apologize for what? For how I treated you when you first came in, Jake said, his voice shaking slightly. I made assumptions about you based on how you were dressed. I tried to talk you out of looking at expensive watches because I thought you couldn't afford them. That was wrong of me, and I'm really sorry. Jake expected Keanu to be upset, or at least annoyed. Instead, the actor set down the watch carefully and looked at Jake with understanding eyes. Jake, stop, Keanu said gently. You don't need to apologize for anything. But I do, Jake insisted. I judged you before I even knew who you were. That's not right. Keanu was quiet for a moment, then he smiled. Can I tell you something? This happens to me all the time, and you know what? I'm glad it does. Jake looked confused. You're glad?
Absolutely.
Keanu said, do you know how refreshing it is to walk into a place and be treated like a regular person? To have someone look out for my wallet instead of trying to separate me from my money as quickly as possible. Jake still felt terrible. I was rude to you. No, you weren't, Keanu said firmly. You were honest and protective. Those are good qualities in a salesperson. You're trying to save me from making a mistake I couldn't afford. It shows you care about your customers as people, not just as sources of money. Robert shifted uncomfortably nearby. Jake could tell. His manager was worried about how this conversation was going. I've been in situations like this many times, Keanu continued. Early in my career, especially, I remember going to a fancy restaurant once, dressed pretty much like I am now. The hostess told me they were booked solid, even though I could see empty tables. I wasn't famous then, just a struggling actor who looked like he couldn't afford. The menu? What did you do? Lisa asked, fascinated. I left, Keanu said simply. And I learned something important. That experience taught me never to judge other people by their appearance or their circumstances, because you never know what someone's story really is. Jake felt a little better, but he was still confused. But you're successful now. You could eat at any restaurant you want. Success doesn't change who you are inside, Keanu said. Or at least, it shouldn't. Still remember what it felt like to be dismissed and underestimated. Those experiences made me more careful about how I treat other people. Is that why you dress so casually? Jake asked. Keanu laughed. Partly, but mostly I dress this way because it's comfortable and because I don't like drawing attention to myself. When people recognize me because of my clothes or because I'm acting like a big shot, the whole interaction becomes about my fame instead of about whatever I'm actually trying to do. Like buying a watch, Jake said, starting to understand. Exactly. I wanted to come in here and learn about watches and maybe find something special for my friend. If everyone had recognized me immediately, I probably would have spent the whole time talking about movies instead of timepieces. Robert looked relieved that the conversation was going well. Mr. Reeves, I hope you understand that we always strive to provide excellent service to all our customers. I can see that, Keanu said. Jake has been wonderful. He's knowledgeable, honest, and he clearly cares about doing the right thing. Jake felt a warm feeling in his chest. He had never expected to receive a compliment from someone as famous as Keanu Reeves. Can I ask you something? Jake said. Don't you ever get tired of people treating you differently once they know who you are? Keanu thought about this for a moment. Sometimes, but I try to remember that most people mean well. They're excited or nervous, and they don't know how to act. I can't blame them for that. How do you want people to treat you? Lisa asked. Like a person, Keanu said without hesitation. Just like a regular person who happens to make movies for a living. Want to be able to buy groceries and take the bus and shop for watches without it being a big production? Jake was starting to see Keanu in a completely different way. He wasn't just a famous actor. He was someone who valued normal human interactions and simple kindness. "The friend you're buying the watch for," Jake said. "Tell me more about him." Keanu's face lit up. "His name is Danny. He's been my stunt coordinator for over 10 years. We've worked on 6 movies together, and he's become like a brother to me." "What makes him so special?" Jake asked. "Danny treats everyone on set with respect, from the biggest stars to the newest crew members. He's incredibly skilled at his job, but he never shows off or tries to make other people feel small, and he's saved my life more than once." Keanu paused, seeming to remember something specific. "There was this one scene we were filming about 3 years ago. It involved me hanging from a helicopter about 50 feet off the ground. The safety cables started to fail, and Danny spotted it immediately. He had the whole crew stop everything and get me down safely. If he hadn't been paying attention, I could have been seriously hurt or killed." "That's incredible," Jake said. "Here's the thing that really shows you what kind of person Danny is," Keanu continued. "After we fixed the problem and reshot the scene, he came up to me and apologized. He said he was sorry that his equipment had malfunctioned and that he had put me in danger. He took responsibility for something that wasn't even his fault." "Sounds like a good friend," Lisa said. "The best," Keanu agreed. "I've tried to give him bonuses and raises over the years, but he always turns them down. He says he's just doing his job and that he doesn't need anything extra. But I want to give him something that shows how much his friendship and professionalism mean to me." Jake looked at the Patek Philippe sitting on the counter. "A watch like this is permanent. Something he could keep forever and pass down to his kids." "That's exactly what I was thinking," Keanu said. "Danny has a son who's interested in movies. Maybe someday this watch could remind both of them that good work and loyalty are always worth recognizing." Jake felt honored to be part of this story. He was helping someone choose a gift that would celebrate friendship and dedication. It felt much more important than just selling an expensive watch. "There's something else I should tell you about." "Danny," Keanu said with a smile. "He's never seen any of my movies, not one. He says he prefers to think of me as just another actor he works with, not as a movie star. It helps keep our friendship normal and honest." Jake laughed. "That's probably good for you. It's the best thing about our friendship," Keanu said. "He keeps me grounded and reminds me what really matters." Jake looked at Keanu and realized something important was happening to him. This wasn't just about selling a watch anymore. This whole experience was teaching him something about life that he had never understood before. "Can I ask you something personal?" Jake said carefully. "Sure," Keanu replied, seeming genuinely open to whatever Jake wanted to know. "When you first started acting, before you were famous, did people treat you badly because of how you looked or where you came from?" Keanu nodded slowly, "More times than I can count. I grew up without much money. My father left when I was young, and my mom worked hard to take care of me and my sister. When I first came to Hollywood, I didn't have nice clothes or a fancy car. Looked like exactly what I was, a kid from Toronto who was trying to make it in the movies." Jake felt a connection to this story. His own family didn't have much money either. "I remember one audition where the casting director took one look at me and said I wasn't right for the part before I even got a chance to read any lines." Keanu continued. "He said I didn't look like leading man material. I was wearing jeans with holes in them and an old jacket that belonged to my friend. That must have hurt," Lisa said softly. "It did hurt," Keanu admitted, "but it also taught me something valuable. It showed me how it feels to be judged unfairly. I promised myself that if I ever became successful, I would never make other people feel the way I felt that day." Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking about this. "Is that why you're so nice to everyone on your movie sets?" "Partly," Keanu said, "but also because I learned that the most important people are often the ones who seem the least important. A person who brings you coffee might have the best idea for solving a problem. The security guard might know something that saves the whole production money. If you only pay attention to the famous people or the people in charge, you miss out on so much." Robert was listening to this conversation with interest. Jake could tell his manager was learning something too. "I had a teacher once who told me something I never forgot," Keanu said. She said that how you treat people who can't help you shows who you really are as a person. Anyone can be nice to their boss or to someone famous, but being kind to the person cleaning your office or serving your food when there's nothing in it for you, that's when your true character shows. Jake felt like a light bulb had turned on in his head. That's what I did wrong today, isn't it? I treated you differently because I thought you couldn't help me make a big sale. You didn't do anything wrong, Keanu said firmly. You were trying to be helpful and honest. But think about it this way. What if I really had been someone who couldn't afford expensive watches? That'd have made me less deserving of respect and good service? Jake thought about this question seriously. No, it wouldn't have. Exactly, Keanu said. Every person who walks through that door deserves to be treated with dignity, whether they're buying a $5 item or a $50,000 item. What we do have to be practical, Robert said. We can't spend 2 hours with every customer. If they're not serious buyers, I understand that, Keanu said. But there's a difference between being efficient and being dismissive. Jake wasn't dismissive with me. He was protective and honest. Those are good things. Jake was starting to understand what Keanu meant. So the problem wasn't that I mentioned the price. The problem was that I assumed you couldn't afford it based on how you looked. Now you're getting it, Keanu said with a smile. It's okay to discuss price and budget with customers. That's helpful. But making assumptions about what people can afford based on their appearance, that's where things can go wrong. This happens in the movie business all the time, Keanu continued. Executives will dismiss an actor or a writer or a director because they don't look the part or because they don't have the right connections. Some of the most talented people I know have been overlooked because someone made a snap judgment about them. What do you do when you see that happening? Lisa asked. I try to speak up when I can, Keanu said. If I'm in a position to give someone a chance, I do it. But the most important thing is to examine my own behavior and make sure I'm not doing the same thing to other people. Jake realized he had been doing exactly what Keanu was talking about. He had looked at a customer's clothes and appearance and decided what kind of service they deserved. I think I understand now, Jake said. Not about treating everyone the same. It's about giving everyone the same respect and the same chance to be heard. That's beautifully put, Keanu said. Everyone has a story. Everyone has dignity. Everyone deserves to be treated like a human being who matters. Even difficult customers, Jake asked, thinking about some of the rude people he had dealt with. Especially difficult customers, Keanu said. Usually when people are rude or demanding, it's because they're having a bad day or because someone else treated them badly. Kindness can break that cycle. Jake thought about a customer from the previous week who had been very demanding and impatient. At the time, Jake had been annoyed and had given the minimum level of service required. Now he wondered if the man had been dealing with something difficult in his personal life. I read somewhere that you gave away most of your money from the Matrix movies, Lisa said. Is that true? Keanu looked a bit uncomfortable with the question. I don't really like to talk about things like that, but I will say that money is just a tool. The important thing is what you do with it and how it affects your relationships with other people. What do you mean? Jake asked. Well, if having money makes you feel superior to other people, or if it makes you forget where you came from, then it's actually harmful, Keanu explained. But if you can use it to help people or to create opportunities for others, then it becomes something positive. Is that why you don't act like a big shot? Jake asked. I try not to, Keanu said, because I know that my success is partly due to luck and partly due to a lot of other people helping me along the way. The stunt coordinators, the directors, the crew members, the writers, they all contributed to whatever success I've had. It would be wrong for me to act like I did it all by myself. Jake felt like he was getting a masterclass in how to be a good person. Everything Keanu said made sense, but Jake had never thought about these things so clearly before. Do you think people can change? Jake asked. I mean, if someone has been judgmental or unkind, can they learn to be different? Absolutely, Keanu said without hesitation. The fact that you're asking that question shows that you're already changing. Awareness is the first step. Once you start paying attention to how you treat people, you can make better choices.